Good to see you again. This is ARIRANG News live from our studio in Seoul. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. We begin with the latest on the knife attack on U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert. The injuries were not life-threatening, but he had to undergo surgery. He is now said to be in stable condition. Here's ARIRANG's Sung-hee.
It was a bloody attack on U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert by a man opposed to the joint military drills between Seoul and Washington. At a breakfast meeting in central Seoul on Thursday, a man slashed Lippert with a 10-inch knife, leaving him with a deep cut on his right cheek and left hand. It was the first such attack on a U.S. ambassador to South Korea. The ambassador was transferred to Yonsei Severance Hospital and is now in stable condition. The 55-year-old suspect, Kim Ki-jong, claims to be an advocate of a reunified Korea. But he has a history of unpredictable behavior. He was given a 2-year prison sentence in 2010 for throwing a piece of concrete at the Japanese ambassador to South Korea. U.S. State Department Deputy Spokesperson Marie Harf said Washington strongly condemns this act of violence. The ambassador, who is a close friend of President Barack Obama, received a phone call from the president, according to the U.S. National Security Council. Seoul's foreign ministry released a statement saying it finds the attack on the U.S. ambassador, South Korea's closest ally, deeply regrettable, and that such an act cannot be tolerated. It also pledged to bolster security for diplomatic missions in Seoul. Since taking office last October, Lippert has been passionate about Korea and is well known for his activities on Twitter. Whether this latest turn of events will leave a dent in the strong alliance between South Korea and the U.S. remains to be seen. Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
Now, despite the attack on the U.S. ambassador, 2 major annual military drills between Seoul and Washington that began this week will continue as planned. That's according to General Curtis Scaparrotti, who is the commander of the U.S. Forces Korea. He said the 2-week-long Key Resolve drill, a computer-simulated exercise, and the 8-week-long field training exercise Full Eagle will go ahead as scheduled. Now, this comes, of course, after the ambassador's attacker was said to have been protesting the drills. And President Park Geun-hye, who is currently in the Middle East, said the attack on Ambassador Lippert was an unacceptable attack on the Seoul-Washington alliance. Her aides say the president was appalled upon hearing the news. Roughly half an hour after it occurred, she expressed her hope for a prompt recovery for the ambassador and expressed her regret to his family and U.S. President Barack Obama. The Korean government says it will do all that's necessary to resolve the case in close cooperation with the U.S. And moving on to President Park's trip to the Middle East, she is now in the United Arab Emirates. As she did in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, the president is expected to press ahead with her plans to expand economic cooperation in the Middle East. ARIRANG's presidential office correspondent Choi Yu-sun sends us this report from Abu Dhabi.
This is President Park's second visit to Abu Dhabi in less than a year. She was here last May to mark an installation of a Korean-made nuclear reactor built under a 2009 bilateral agreement. The reactor at the Barakah nuclear plant site, some 300 kilometers west of Abu Dhabi, is part of a $19 billion contract Korea won to build 4 nuclear plants in the Gulf nation by the year 2020. It's Korea's first ever nuclear reactor export. President Park's previous trip had to be brief because it came only 1 month after the Sewol ferry disaster. This time, she plans to carry out her diplomacy in full force to strengthen Seoul's cooperation with Abu Dhabi in nuclear energy, infrastructure, and healthcare. In an interview with the UAE's official news agency, President Park stressed Korea and the UAE will be able to enjoy shared prosperity if they bolster economic ties in such high value-added areas. In that respect, the Korean president said the Barakah plant project has laid the groundwork for two-way cooperation for the next 100 years.
She added the two sides have complementary strengths: Korea in manufacturing, ICT and healthcare, the UAE in energy, finance, and capital. President Park then said she hoped to go beyond the economy to bolster security cooperation with the UAE, as peace and stability in the two sides' respective regions, Northeast Asia and the Middle East, are crucial to their prosperity. Choi Yu-sun, ARIRANG News, Abu Dhabi.
As U.S. and Japanese officials meet in Tokyo on a trade deal called the Trans-Pacific Partnership, political analysts in Korea have made claims about events leading up to the talks. They say that recent controversial comments made by a senior U.S. official were aimed at buttering up Japan ahead of the negotiations. Arirang's Connie Kim has more.
Delegations from the U.S. and Japan are meeting in Tokyo on Thursday for talks over a regional free trade deal, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The two nations have reportedly reached consensus on some of the most sensitive items, such as automobile and agricultural products, and they're pushing to conclude the talks before Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to Washington in late April or early May. The TPP meeting is garnering extra attention as it follows some controversial remarks made last week by a senior U.S. official. Undersecretary of State Wendy Sherman said political leaders should not exploit nationalist feelings and earn cheap applause by vilifying a former enemy. The comments sparked outrage in Seoul with Korean officials, saying Washington was letting Japan get away with whitewashing its wartime atrocities. The State Department later clarified that Sherman's comments did not indicate a shift in Washington's stance on the historical tensions in Northeast Asia. However, pundits point out that the remark comes at a time when the U.S. is trying to strengthen its ties with Tokyo, with the TPP deal near the top of its to-do list. For the U.S., the TPP is an effort to increase its economic influence in the Asia-Pacific region to counter China's growing presence. On the Japanese side, analysts say that by concluding the trade pact, Abe would have a better chance to speak before U.S. Congress during his planned visit to Washington. That possibility is a controversial one, however, as the Japanese leader is expected to promote Japan as a country that has followed a peaceful path since the end of World War II. Adding to concerns, Japan appears to have shifted its stance on its relations with Korea. Tokyo's Foreign Affairs Ministry has removed a sentence from its website that said Korea was a country that shares Japan's basic thoughts on freedom, democracy, and economic issues. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
And North Korea had something to say about Wendy Sherman's comments. The regime has made some sarcastic remarks accusing South Korea of trying really hard to cover up what Sherman said. The North's propaganda website 우리민족끼리 said it pitied Seoul for taking sides with Washington's efforts to clarify Sherman's remarks, calling the situation a tragic comedy. It said South Korea should officially complain about the remarks, adding that they were aimed at pressing for a stronger trilateral military alliance between Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington. Now, for the first time in more than 4 decades, Korea's inflation rate grew at a slower pace last year than Japan did. Low inflation is one of the key signs that the economy is losing vitality. Our Son Jung-in has the details.
Korea's inflation rate stood at 1.3% in 2014, almost 1.5 percentage points lower than that recorded by Japan. It's the first time since 1973 that Korean consumer prices grew slower than Japan's. While Japan's inflation rate was buoyed by a weak yen and a sales tax hike, prices in Korea remained flat due to a drop in petrochemical products and agricultural goods. But it's not just Japan where prices grew faster than Korea, prompting concerns that the domestic economy might be nearing a Japan-style deflation. Korea's consumer prices were even below the OECD average of 1.7% and the average price growth rate of 1.6% of G7 countries, including Canada and the United States. The Korean government, however, has dismissed concerns over deflation risks, saying the country's prices, excluding volatile energy and food components, rose 2.3% last month from the same period a year ago. For all of last year, the core inflation grew by 2% from 2013. An unnamed finance ministry official says that the government so far has no specific plans to tackle the country's low price trend. 손정인, ARIRANG News.
And over in China, it has lowered its economic growth target for 2015 to the lowest target in 11 years, amid worries that the country could face greater financial challenges this year. In an annual report to the National People's Congress on Thursday, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang set the country's gross domestic product growth target at around 7% for this year. The figure is down from the 7.5% target the government set for 2014 and lower than the actual growth of 7.4%, marking the slowest expansion in 24 years. As for the country's defense budget, China aims to increase it by roughly 10% compared to last year. And now on to the second of our three-part series looking at China's economy. Today we focus on how the economic slowdown in China is affecting the Korean economy. ARIRANG's Hwang has the story, and she starts by giving us some export figures.
Korea's exports to China dropped by almost 0.5% last year, a stark contrast from the average annual growth of over 20% from 2000 to 2008 and 14% after the global financial crisis. It used to be global demand that determined Korea's exports to China, as Korean firms largely ship intermediary goods to the country. The situation now, however, is quite different.
A majority of intermediary goods exported to China for assembly are now consumed within China. So Korea's exports to China are more affected by the demand in that country than in other nations like the U.S. or the EU.
A recent report shows that a 1 percentage point drop in Chinese growth equals a 0.17 percentage point cut in Korea's GDP. And with China posting its worst growth in 24 years in 2014, prompting the government to focus on boosting domestic consumption, experts say that old business strategies will no longer work.
The consumer market will continue to expand in China, so in the long term, Korean exporters should look into what kind of consumer goods will meet the needs of the Chinese people.
What's even more unsettling is that Chinese firms are now improving their own supply capacity to replace Korean intermediary goods. Many key Korean industries are concerned that their main export items like display screens, steel, and petrochemical products will get squeezed out of China within the next few years. Such changing landscape has raised the urgency for Korean exporters to produce high-quality finished goods catering to China's changing demand. Hwang, ARIRANG News.
The Korean government is holding off on plans to raise cigarette prices at local duty-free shops. That's according to an unnamed government official. The finance ministry is reportedly monitoring the situation in China, as Beijing is expected to hike cigarette prices at their duty-free shops in China. The source says the Korean government will take a wait-and-see mode for the time being, as there's high demand for Korean tobacco from Chinese tourists. The government was previously considering a price hike for duty-free cigarettes, which are currently 60% below market price after raising cigarette prices earlier this year. Korea's leading conglomerate Samsung has been declared the second most valuable brand in the world. Data by UK-based market research firm Brand Finance on Thursday put the estimated value of the Samsung brand at nearly $82 billion. This is a 4% jump from last year. The top dog at the moment is Apple, of course, whose brand value was estimated at $128 billion. The market research firm calculates a brand's value based on the company's financial health and the brand loyalty of consumers. Samsung was followed by Google and Microsoft, estimated at $77 billion and $67 billion, respectively. Now, there's one market that's being hit hard by bigger and better quality smartphone screens. It's the tablet PC market. The tablet sales of major players like Samsung, Apple, and Amazon all plunged in the final 3 months of last year. Park Ji-won has the details.
The global tablet market saw its first ever on-year drop in sales during the last quarter of 2014. According to market research firm IDC, tablet sales dropped 3.2% in the fourth quarter from the previous year. This is the first sales drop in the global tablet sector since the devices were introduced in 2010. Apple sold some 21 million units of its iPad during the fourth quarter of last year, a decline of nearly 18% from the same period in 2013. Samsung sold 11 million tablets during the same period, a drop of more than 18%. Amazon suffered a whopping 70% drop during the same period. Only China's Lenovo recorded positive growth of about 9% in the fourth quarter from the year before, thanks to marketing and sales strategies like selling its laptops alongside its tablets. Industry watchers say the popularity of large-screen smartphones like the Galaxy Note and iPhone 6 Plus represents an increasing threat to tablets. With the high-end tablet market becoming increasingly saturated, Apple is aiming to expand into the enterprise computing market with the iPad, following a partnership deal with IBM last year. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Bringing you the fresh updates from stories breaking in Korea and abroad. We give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
The World Health Organization has released a new set of guidelines advising people to consume less sugar. Its recommended amount is less than 10% of your total energy intake. Kim Young-gil has more.
The World Health Organization says the world is eating too much sugar and advises reducing sugar consumption to 50 grams or 12 teaspoons per day. It says a further reduction to below 5%, which translates to 25 grams or 6 teaspoons, would provide additional health benefits, such as preventing obesity, diabetes, and tooth decay. The guidelines don't apply to the sugars in fruits, vegetables, and milk, since they come with essential nutrients. According to the WHO, the global average for daily sugar intake stood at about 58 grams per person in 2003 and increased to 63 grams in 2013. The UN Health Agency added that the sugars consumed today are mostly hidden in processed foods. For example, 1 tablespoon of ketchup contains around 4 grams or 1 teaspoon of sugar. A single can of soda contains up to 40 grams or 10 teaspoons of sugar. Sugar consumption in Korea is also high. According to the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety, Koreans consume at least 60 grams of sugar per day, which is 10 grams more than the WHO's recommendation. Concerns about the possible health effects have prompted the ministry to advise parents to be vigilant about what their children eat and drink. To lend a hand, the ministry has set up centers around the nation to monitor the quality of children's food services. The Center for Children's Food Service Management develops menus for children that are low in sugar, and it recommends that catering companies supply healthy drinks like tea instead of soda. Workers from the center also visit daycare centers and teach children about nutrition as part of a sugar reduction campaign. The Food Ministry says it will continue to work with companies, consumer groups, and academics to find ways to cut the sugar levels in processed foods. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
Well, Baek Nam-jun is the person usually associated with video art in Korea, but what many don't know is that someone named Park Hyun-gi was indeed Korea's first video artist. He unfortunately passed away at a very early age, but his massive collection of over 20,000 works is still with us. Our Im Yoon-hee has the story.
Where exactly does chaos meet order? The East meet the West. Korea's first video artist, Park Hyun-gi, explored where seemingly polar opposites clash, but also where they can coexist. Video art was a new artistic medium, not just for Park, but also for the world. And as for Park, media became just a tool for an artist bent on finding the place where traditions of Korea could harmonize with the new Western world, and where nature coincides with humanity.
These artworks are on the foundation of nature, but also on Korean traditions. He wanted to find harmony with Western formal language in Korea. Things like rocks, trees, and rivers, they can be found around the world, anywhere you go. And naturally for Park, they became art that harmonizes with humanity.
And nature immediately became his focus, necessary to begin a piece. He would have to go looking for his materials in the great outdoors. The rocks gathered from nature would lead Park to his works, like this video stone tower, a work that would become key pieces to the development of his career, that project the same image as you would expect to see in nature. Park blurs the line between reality and illusion in this low-tech, naturally unnatural work. But his inspiration from nature goes much deeper than the materials he used. Park found a continuous cycle in life, and he conveyed that flow through his video art, each screen capturing another step in this circuit. He found this flowing connected system in the world and the cosmos, but also in his own two hands.
For Park, one of the most important images is the hand. The hand has 5 fingers, but also holds the 5 senses, the 5 elements, and even the universe. The hand is close to you. It's something you use and see every day. So for Park, this was a big part of his search to find harmony in our world.
Park continually strove to think of ways of preserving the traditions of Korea, while still adapting to a rapidly Western and modern world. He was always looking for a unique angle of Korea, and as a result of his perseverance, he just may have found that perfect center.
Welcome back. I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Temperatures have gone up about 1 to 2 degrees from yesterday, but it still feels very cool due to the continuous winds. Now, also today we have the first full moon of the Lunar New Year, and currently we have mostly clear skies nationwide, and nothing big will change by the evening, so you'll have a nice view of this full moon tonight. Now, the time of the full moon is slightly different depending on where you are. Busan will see it first at 6:02 this evening, while Seoul will get a look at 6:09. Now be sure to check it out and also dress warm as the temperatures are expected to drop tonight. Now looking at the rest of the week, the weather will get much better tomorrow with temperatures getting back up to the seasonal averages. And by the weekend, you can expect some spring-like weather conditions. Now checking out the highs for today, Seoul will peak up to 6 this afternoon, while Gwangju and Busan will top both at 8 degrees. Moving over to other regions, Jeju Island gets up high at 8 as well. Dokdo hits 1, while Mount Keungang be sunny at -5 degrees. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's a wrap from us at this hour. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with more updates at 6 p.m. Korea time.